But this panel addresses a very important subject, which is new challenges in international security. Of course, there are the question about rare earths. There are the questions of parliamentary democracies interaction, and many other challenges. Now, we have a panel of 6 speakers, but I cannot find Francesco Ancona. Is Francesco there? So we have one missing. We are supposed to have 6 speakers, but now we have 5. So this means that we can have the full 15 minutes for each speaker, and then use the remaining 15 minutes for Q&A. So without further ado, may I invite the first speaker, Nádia. Make sure I pronounce your name correctly. Loureiro, is it? From the Universidade Nova de Lisboa. Okay. And her subject is parliamentary democracy. So 15 minutes, your presentation is supposed to end by 11:15. Okay.
Okay.
Over to you.
Let me just try to...
Oh, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me, please? Can you hear me? Can you please confirm that you are hearing me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me just a minute, because I think I'm not having... I'm just gonna put the presentation first in presentation mode, because otherwise I will not be able to...
You have to share.
Yeah, I know.
Screen. Yes, right.
Let me just see if you can now. Okay, I think I am in the same situation. So can you see my presentation, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I would like to... it's here. I think now it's perfect.
Okay.
It's full screen, okay? It's
yes,
okay?
It's full screen. Yes, I can see it on full screen.
Okay,
yes.
Let's start. Good morning. I'm Nádia Loureiro. I'm a PhD candidate in international relations at Nova University, Lisbon. I am also parliamentary advisor at Portuguese Parliament since 2018. It is a great pleasure to be participating in the CESRAN annual conference for the 3rd time, but unfortunately, due to professional commitments, I'm unable to be with you in person. As always, because since the beginning, I always speak a little bit about parliamentary diplomacy, and that it's often overlooked, but highly relevant topic that deserves for me a greater attention within academical research. Let me briefly walk you through the structure of this presentation. I will begin by outlining the core problem and its justification, setting the stage for why this topic matters. I will then introduce the theoretical framework, particularly drawing on ontological security theory. Next, I describe how the research was carried out and why these 2 cases, that it is Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean and NATO Parliamentary Assembly, were selected for analysis. We will then explore comparative findings before turning to a focused discussion on the role of parliamentary diplomacy in reinforcing ontological security, especially for small states. Finally, I will conclude with key takeaways and reflections. This line explains the main problem and reason behind the study. Small countries, in fact, often face limits to their power and need to show a clear and stable identity in international politics. For Portugal, this is more complex because it connects to both the Atlantic and the European worlds, influenced by its colonial past and international commitments. These factors can create tensions in how Portugal presents itself to others, especially during political changes or international crises. I suggest in my study that parliamentary diplomacy, often overlooked in mainstream foreign policy analysis, provides a symbolic yet effective mechanism to mitigate these identity anxieties. It enables small states to project continuity, legitimacy, and committed to shared norms. So the theoretical framework is built around two main ideas. First, the concept of ontological security. This doesn't refer to physical survivor, but to the need for a stable and recognized identity in international politics. According to authors like Eden, Smithson, Kinval, or Steele, that I show his book in the previous slides, small states need consistent identity, narratives, to act coherently and to be seen as legitimate. Without that stability, they risk to become inconsistent and reactive in their foreign policy. Second, I look at the parliamentary diplomacy as a strategic tool. So this parliamentary diplomacy works alongside with foreign policy, traditional instruments. But parliamentary diplomacy offers both symbolic and institutional space to project national identity, especially through international parliamentary organizations. So parliamentary diplomacy can serve as a double purpose, defending values like democracy and human rights, while also representing the states publicly. For small states, this visibility helps to build trust, international recognition, and the long-term credibility. About the case selection and the methodology. So this research employs a qualitative interpretative design grounded in constructivist assumptions about how identity and meaning are constructed in international relation. The empirical base consists on institutional documents, parliamentary records, and official statements, ensuring consistency with the symbolic and discursive nature of the analysis. The two case studies were selected, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean and NATO Parliamentary Assembly. Both represent distinct geopolitical arenas, so the Mediterranean and the Euro-Atlantic, where Portugal has assumed parliamentary leadership roles. The analytical focus is on how this engagement contributes to identity projection, symbolic representation, and role performance in multilateral fora. These cases were chosen not only for their strategic relevance, but also for their capacity to illustrate how small states can enhance international visibility through parliamentary diplomacy. Just to explain you a little bit, the upper image shows the emblem of Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, while the lower one depicts the NATO Parliamentary Assembly's official symbol. About the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. Well, between 2017 and 2019, Portugal held the presidency of PAM, led by the MP Pedro Roque from the Social Democratic Party. This marked a key moment on Portuguese parliamentary diplomacy, giving the country the opportunity to show a symbolic leadership in a multilateral Mediterranean forum. This presidency strengthens Portugal's ontological security by, in my point of view, by reinforcing its image as a stable cooperative actor committed to the regional dialogue in the Mediterranean area. It also leads initiatives on migration governance during this mandate, energy cooperation, intercultural dialogue, helping position parliamentary diplomacy as a strategic tool of foreign policy. This engagement allowed Portugal to project a dual identity, as both a Mediterranean as a Lusophone actor, acting as a bridge between Europe and the global South. Such a narrative consistency is especially important for a small states that seek recognition through value-based diplomacy. Just to explain you also, this image on the right shows a formal signing memorandum of understanding between Shura Council of Qatar, and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. In this case was shared by Pedro Roques, that it was the president on that time. So this, it features the PAM, so the PAM presidents on the left and the Qatar Shura speakers Hamed Al Mahmoud on the right. This moment, that it was in 2018, marked a turning point in PAM's external engagement, and it was under the Portuguese presidency that that PAM expanded its reach into Gulf regions. After this, PAM welcomed Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain as full members, and right now, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia are in the process of joining this organization. In another hand, Portugal currently holds the presidency of NATO-PA for the term 2024 to 2026 through the MP Marcos Perestrelo from the Socialist Party. This role significantly enhanced Portugal's international standing, positioning the country as a reliable and normatively aligned ally within the Euro-Atlantic community. Through this presidency, that it was by elections, it's not a nominated presidency, Portugal reinforces its identity as a competent and moderate small power, one that bridges the United States, Europe, and the Lusophone Africa. In this way, Portugal acts as an Atlantic bridge, contributing to NATO soft power through parliamentary engagement and identity projection. So the image on the right, it shows the MP Perestrelo standing before NATO-PA's flag. So the comparative findings reveal that two distinct but complementary approaches to parliamentary diplomacy. NATO-PA is rooting in a highly structured transatlantic alliance where Portugal reinforces its image as a reliable, strategically and aligned ally. This assembly contributes to ontological security through institutional continuity and high-level visibility of the country in Euro-Atlantic decision-making. The emphasis is on coherence in the defense, predictability, and alignment of Portugal with NATO's core values. On the other hand, PAM operates in a more fluid and multipolar regional context. So Portugal's leadership here has focused on soft power, symbolic authority, and intercultural dialogue. PAM allows Portugal to project dual identity, has both European and Lusophone, as it said before. This helps to act as a diplomatic bridge across regional activities. Ontological security, in this case, is reinforced through symbolic leadership, norm entrepreneurship, and active mediation across diverse cultures and political spaces. For all this, parliamentary diplomacy plays a key role in assuring the external continuity of Portugal's self-narrative, projecting the country as a stable, predictable, and responsible actor in international affairs. By reinforcing a coherent identity across multilateral forums, it contributes to symbolic legitimacy, particularly value for small states that rely on recognition rather than material power. It also acts as stabilizing mechanism during episodes of domestic political change or coalition turnover, regardless of internal instability. Parliamentary engagement allows Portugal to maintain consistent international routines essential for ontological security. That said, this strategic function is often constrained by how low visibility in domestic political discourse and by uneven normative recognition abroad, where not all parliamentary voices carrying the same weight. This is really the way how parliamentary diplomacy can help ontological security. So in conclusion, this study makes an original contribution by linking the theory of ontological security with the practice of parliamentary diplomacy, a field that is still not widely explored but increasingly relevant. It shows how Portugal, as a small state, uses parliamentary engagement to maintain a stable identity and build symbolic credibility in international forums. Importantly, this framework isn't just useful for Portugal, but it also can help to explain how small states seek visibility and consistency in their foreign policy through institutional participation. So, in fact, parliamentary diplomacy can be a strategic tool for small states operating in a complex and fragmented international system that how we have nowadays. Just to finish, 3 key policy recommendations emerge from this study. First, parliamentary diplomacy should be integrated into a national foreign policy strategies as a soft power tool. Second, stronger institutional coordination is needed between parliaments and foreign ministers. And third, we must invest in the visibility and systematically documentation of parliamentary international actions. So in terms of future research, it is crucial to expand comparative analysis for other medium-sized states, such we can use, for example, Finland, Uruguay, or Cabo Verde, and also explore how parliamentary diplomacy is perceived as legitimated by international peers, especially in times of crisis and political transition. So these are the 5 key references that I recommend.
Sorry. Hello?
Happy to take any question or comments in this slide. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nádia. As we have now all the 6 speakers now, including I think Francesco just logged in. So I think we better make up a little bit of time. So over to the next speaker, Upasna Mishra. Her paper is the role of rare earths. It's a very, very timely and crucial subject. So over to you.
So is my screen visible?
Yeah, okay. 15 minutes from now, okay? Make sure that you're on time, you keep within the time limits.
Okay. Is it visible?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think you have to unmute yourself. You're muting yourself. You got to unmute yourself.
I have
yeah, okay.
myself. Okay.
Yeah, but I can hear you, yes. But I can see that there is a mute sign on your microphone.
Okay, but am I audible right now?
Okay, all right. I can hear you. And anyone else? Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So the topic of my paper is Strategic Resource Nationalism, the role of rare earth materials in geopolitical rivalries and economic security, the EU perspective. So this paper examines a defining challenge of our era, that is how rare earth elements have become the nexus of economic security, technological sovereignty, and geopolitical competition. As the EU navigates China's supply chain dominance, controlling 90% of refining and 60% of mining, this presentation analyzes. This paper explores 3 dimensions: the EU's dependency risks, China's coercive economic statecraft, and pathways to resilient supply chains. Now, strategic resource nationalism manifests when states weaponize control over critical minerals, a paradigm shift from 20th century oil politics. Now, China's rare earth monopoly exempt concentrated supply creates what scholars term as structural power, where control over imports confirms supply chain dynamics and use vulnerability, where heavy reliance on China for rare earth imports. The 2022 simulation by Kiel Institute also highlighted the same. Now, when we talk about China's monopoly, historical precedents, the 2010 rare earth crisis, now China's dominance stems from deliberate state capitalism, subsidies, lax environmental enforcement, and forced technology transfers. The 2023 gallium and germanium restrictions marked an evolution from blunt embargoes to precision coercion, targeting semiconductors while maintaining plausible deniability. Empirical analysis shows such measures increase target states' compliance costs by 300 to 500%. For the European Union, this underscores the security dilemma of green tech. Renewable expansion ironically deepens reliance on adversarial supply chains. China's actions align with theories of asymmetric interdependence, where asymmetric dependencies empower dominant actors to extract political concession. Now, recognizing the dangers of dependence on Chinese rare earths, the US has pursued a multi-pronged strategy to secure alternative supplies. The Defense Production Act, for instance, has been invoked to classify rare earths as essential for national security, unlocking funding for domestic mining and processing projects. Companies like MP Materials, which operates the Mountain Pass mine in California, have received government support to reduce reliance on Chinese refining. For the European Union, navigating the US-China rivalry presents a complex challenge. The EU is reluctant to fully decouple from China, given the deep integration of their economies. Unlike the United States, which has actually pursued aggressive tech restrictions, Europe favors a strategy of de-risking, that is, reducing vulnerabilities while maintaining trade ties. For the case of Russia, Russia possesses substantial rare earth reserves, particularly in the Arctic and Siberian region, but has historically lacked the processing capacity to compete with China. Western sanctions following the invasion of Ukraine have further strained Russia's ability to develop its rare earth sector independently. As a result, Moscow has increasingly turned to China for investment and technology transfer, creating a new axis in the global rare earth market. For Europe, the situation presents both risks and opportunities. While some policymakers have floated the idea of sourcing Russian rare earths to reduce dependence on China, sanctions and political considerations make this highly unlikely. Instead, the EU is more likely to focus on partnerships with Africa and Australia, where untapped reserves offer potential for diversification. Now, the Critical Raw Materials Act represents the European Union's most ambitious attempt to reconcile sustainability with security. Its 2030 targets 10% domestic extraction, 40% EU processing, face implementation hurdles. Sweden's Norakar project, for instance, delayed since 2013, exemplifies the tension between strategic needs and environmental governance. Meanwhile, recycling rates languish below 1% for most rare earths, constrained by technical and economic barriers. The success of this act hinges on overcoming these paradoxes through what the literature calls strategic industrial policy, state intervention to correct market failures in critical sectors. Now, supply chain diversification, where EU could actually talk about strategic partnerships and innovation, collaborate with resource-rich countries like Canada and Greenland. And there are challenges in Africa due to political instability and China's entrenched presence. So African ventures risk replicating colonial extractivism. Reshoring is prohibitively expensive. Lina's Malaysian plant requires around $800 million of subsidies to compete with China. Now, there are other challenges as well. First is sustainable mining. So public resistance to mining projects in regions like Sweden and Portugal. There's a need for strict sustainability standards and transparent community engagement. Then there's human rights risks in alternative supply chains, where there's ethical concern in sourcing from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Myanmar. Then EU's proposed corporate sustainability due diligence directive is also there, which attempts to talk about balance, but enforcement remains untested against state-backed Chinese firms. Then there's high costs of reshoring and reliance on China. Financial supply chain challenges are there, and there's importance of public-private partnership and state subsidies. Then there's role of private sector. So there's coordination among member states for a unified investment strategy, potential establishment of a sovereign wealth fund for critical minerals. Then there's geopolitical risk and strategic autonomy, focusing on strategic redundancy rather than autonomy, balancing cooperation with the US, also while not letting it go towards over-reliance. Then there's circular economy solutions, that is boosting rare earth recycling from electronic waste. And ethical diversified sourcing, deepening partnership with resource-rich nations, ensuring ethical sourcing and maintaining diversified sourcing. And there's technological innovation, that is accelerating R&D into rare earth-free alternatives and improving mining and refining technology. And strengthening international partnerships, collaborations with resource-rich allies, development of sustainable mining projects. And accelerating recycling technology and material substitution, developing trade defense mechanisms, and strategic stockpiling for crisis preparedness, balancing cooperation and strategic interdependence. And in conclusion, I would just say that the EU must pursue strategic interdependence, combining diversification and diversified partnerships with selective autonomy. This would require a BRICS-style mineral alliance with democracies, R&D tax incentives, and to scale recycling, and an anti-coercion instrument under the WTO rules. Now, the alternative, that is full decoupling, is economically untenable. Resilience in multipolar systems derives not from autarky but from network redundancy. And through proactive balanced policies, the EU can transform its current vulnerabilities into strengths, ensuring that its green and digital transitions proceed without compromising its values or autonomy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Apsala, for keeping within the time on such an intricate and important question. Now we turn the panel to the next speaker, Mr. He, Ruohan He from the University of Hong Kong. And his topic is the economic and social effects of Canada's humanitarian policy. So over to you, Mr. He.
Yeah, okay. Hi everyone.
Oh, sorry, Miss He.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so good morning everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm very honored to have the opportunity for this conference. And my name is Ruohan. Today I'll be presenting my research on the economic and social effects of Canada's humanitarian policy and refugee resettlement, a comprehensive analysis of host community. Okay, so I'll be introduce myself first and deep talk about this topic. So I was born in Beijing, China, and I went to Toronto when I was 14 years old. I was graduated from the University of Toronto, specialist in international affairs and major in economic. And last year, I just graduated my master from the University of Hong Kong, Master of International and Public Affairs. Okay, so as the world faces unprecedented displacement from regions like Middle East and Africa, understanding effective integration strategies has never been more urgent. So over the past 10 decades, refugee waves from Syria, Afghanistan, and Ukraine have reshaped the international migration landscape. Canada has long been seen as a model for refugee resettlement with its private sponsorship program and multicultural policies. Meanwhile, Europe has grappled with large-scale arrivals, often in crisis mode. By examining both, we can uncover lessons that benefit not just these regions but global refugee policy. These two starkly different scenarios provide perfect comparative samples. So we can see the pictures on the right corner here. The dark red lines are focused in the areas of Europe, Canada, and United States. And from the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugee, most of the refugees are sent to Canada, Europe, and also United States. And in Canada, we have 3 different programs. So GER receive financial support from the Canadian government. BVOR also received financial support from the Canadian government and private sponsors. And private sponsorship of refugees, so they who are ready to travel and are matched with sponsors with help. And in long term,
Stephanie,
yeah.
we can't see your individual slides. On the screen, there is only your first slide with the title. We don't see your separate slides. So I think that you have to click on the individual slides before we can see them. I mean, at
Oh,
least, yeah, because on
oh
my
my God.
screen, it's only your first slide.
Um,
It's only
I
the title.
oh my God.
Okay.
How can I change it? Like,
Oh, okay. Well, it's too difficult to just carry on because we are very limited time. So unless you can fix it right now, just carry on. I thought that you share your screen and then you can press the forward button so the slides can proceed because you only the first slide with the title. But
oh, okay. Let
yeah,
me. Uh, oh my God. I'm so sorry about that.
no, it's
I
okay.
didn't know that. It. Um,
Well, if it takes too much time, just back to where you were and just repeat your talk verbally. Yeah. Can oh yeah. Okay. So at least a new slide. Okay.
okay. Is this one like working?
Yeah. Yeah. I can see the backgrounds and motivation slide. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm here right now.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Now we got
so
it.
yeah. So, in the long term, we can also see a positive economic contributions in Canada. And yeah, so what makes this research unique is its comparative lens. Most studies focus on one country or region, but by analyzing Canada and Europe side by side, we can identify transferable strategies and pitfalls, whether in employment, social cohesion, or government and geo collaboration. So Canada and Europe adopt fundamentally different refugee approaches. Canada's proactive planning model emphasizes pre-arrival vetting and community-led integration, but require high fundings. In contrast, Europe's crisis response system relies on emergency restrictions and state-run center, achieving faster labor access but lower integration due to welfare strains. While Canada faces capacity limits, Europe struggles with uneven burden sharing, highlighting a core trade-off between preparedness and flexibility. And yeah, so why compare? Canada prioritized orderly resettlement through United Nations partnership and private sponsorship, focusing on fast integration with broad public support. The EU's Dublin system focused frontline states to persist arrivals, leading to uneven integration and Hungary's and border crisis. While Canada maintains bipartisan consensus, the EU faces far-right backlash and policy fragmentation. So Canada's planned approach contrasts with the EU's emergency measures. Um, yeah, so the hypotheses are positive impact in host community and also better integration, economic contributions from refugee, and also enhance refugees' economic integration, employment outcomes, and also in terms of social dimensions is mixed impact. And yeah, so my research objectives are identify best practice from Canada and Europe, analysis gaps in integration support system, and propose a unified frameworks for refugee policy. So by drawing parallels between Canada's approach and Europe's experience, the study aims to provide a comprehensive framework for understanding the complexities of refugee integration. Yeah, and so the methods is combining policy analysis, field research, and data analysis. I'll be very short, quick in this section. So the frameworks also include policy analysis framework, economic impact framework, social integration framework, and a comparative analysis framework. And the fundings at this stage, so Canada's refugee system achieved 23% higher long-term integration rate than the EU due to its PR focused model, but at 2.5 times that cost. So while the EU excelled in fast labor market access, a fragmented policy creates serves gaps post-entry. Canada's stable federal managed system ensuring consistent outcomes, whereas the EU struggles with uneven implementations across member states. And this contrast highlights a fundamental trade-off. Canada invests more for sustainable integration, while the EU prioritizes rapid entry but face long-term cohesion challenges. Yeah, and so for the policy recommendation frameworks, this hybrid model balance cost efficiency with social cohesion, while leveraging technology and transnational cooperation. Pilot testing in select cities could demonstrate feasibility before scaling. And so as I said, the expected contributions include policy effects, policy recommendations, lessons for nations facing sudden refugee influx, and also strengthening global refugee protection frameworks. And so very last, this research isn't just academic, it's a toolkit for better policy. Imagine a Syrian refugee in Germany benefiting from Canada's sponsorship model, or a Ukrainian family in Canada accessing Europe's rapid housing programs. So Europe's, the power of cross-border learning. And in closing, refugee integration isn't just a national issue, it is a global challenge requiring shared solution. By bridging Canada's and Europe's experience, we take step forward toward more human, effective system. And so thank you everyone for listening.
Oh, thank you very much indeed, Stephanie. You've saved us 5 minutes for a Q&A, which is very, very good because it's a packed panel. So without further ado, let me turn to the other speaker. Fourth in line is Francesco Ancona. Francesca?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you
Francesco,
for the Francesco. Yeah,
yeah, Francesco.
Francesco.
Yes.
That's good. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity for being here. My name is Francesco Ancona. I work for the European Network of Transmission System Operators for Electricity. I work in the legal department, and today I would like to present my paper proposal called the EU Strategic Securitization of Electricity Infrastructure and Critical Raw Materials, which sort of also ties also with the previous presenter. The objective of this proposal is to explore how energy and particularly electricity infrastructure and critical raw materials have been securitized in EU strategic thinking and narrative. I will focus on geopolitical dynamics, especially the Ukraine war. and their effects on EU strategic thinking and security discourse, as well as raw materials and grid vulnerabilities, emerging technological threats, and also how the EU is responding through institutional strategies and policies responses, and how these affect and at the same time are being affected by all these factors. So the paper proposal follows or is based on the securitization theory framed by Buzan and other authors. The concept of security also applies to energy and is quite predominant in today's security discourse in Europe, as it is being framed as an existential threat to the stability and autonomy of Europe. There are various definitions when it comes to energy security, but generally they can be narrowed down to the continuous availability of energy in varied forms, sufficient quantities, and reasonable prices. So there are various aspects which can be summed up in this definition. At the same time, there are 5 key dimensions when it comes to energy security, which include the robustness, i.e. the ability to withstand predictable stress, such as increased demand. Geopolitical considerations are also to be noted, so the protection from external threats that can be attacks, security, disruption of supply, political instability, and so on. The resilience of the structure of the grid, so how well the infrastructure can recover from disruptions. Sustainability is also another aspect which is very important, which is the how compatible is a system with climate goals and how sustainable it is in the long run. And finally, there are also aspects from the market, more specifically, how can energy remain accessible and fairly priced. At EU level, energy security is enshrined in Article 194 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the EU, which identified it as a shared responsibility between EU and member states. Member states retain the right to decide on the conditions for exploiting their own resources and choose between different energy sources and decide the structure of their supply. However, at pan-European level, coordination of all these aspects is extremely emphasized and well defined in technical details through various initiatives, which we will see later. At the same time, electricity systems are quite peculiar compared to other energy resources and sources of energy. First of all, they're extremely important for state function because they fuel vital emergency services, services such as healthcare, industry, ICT, and defense. So any of these disruptions can threaten state functionality. They also pose quite unique challenges compared to other energy carriers because electricity is quite difficult and expensive to store. There are batteries, but at the same time, these are quite difficult to acquire. They're quite expensive. There is also a need to constantly match supply and demand, as electricity is a flow. There is no stop and there is no storage, so it needs to be constantly supplied throughout the whole grid. And of course, its loss has an immediate impact on state's function. So whenever power is cut, then that's it. Completely a blackout will occur. Electricity grids are also vulnerable to several factors, such as aging infrastructure, lack of energy supply diversity, low energy mix, increased demand, of course, and as we've seen in Ukraine, physical attacks and non-physical attacks are also a source of concern. There are single points of failure, but also climate change and other factors such as digitalization through, for example, the use of AI. They can all contribute to system vulnerability. So when the war in Ukraine has brought quite a turning point when it comes to energy security discourse in Europe, because it highlighted the devastating consequences stemming from the destruction of critical infrastructure. I won't go through all the details in this slide, but the key highlight is basically the critical infrastructure in Ukraine since day one became key target of attacks, which pretty much reduced its generation and transportation capacity of electricity. to just 9 gigawatts compared to the original 56 before wartime period. At the same time, however, Ukraine managed to adapt to the situation by decentralizing the deployment of specifically renewable energy sources and building modular power networks, which with a strong emphasis on grid flexibility and interconnection, which allowed to reroute essential power to critical facilities. So in that way, Ukraine has shown also Europe how it can learn from the war in order to develop a resilient grid. One of the primary effects of the Ukraine conflict on European security discourse when it comes to energy is, of course, desynchronization of Ukraine from the Russian system. I won't go through the whole timeline of events, but basically here I would like to emphasize, of course, at the early stages of the war, how quickly Ukraine managed to, also with the help of ENTSO-E, to disconnect from the Russian grid and connect to the Continental Europe Synchronous Areas, or CESA, which is the European power grid. So this was a tremendous achievement, which was done in record time, and also improved the resilience of the Ukrainian power grid and allowed it to import up to an additional 2 gigawatts of electricity. In a similar case, although it's a little bit more it's been ongoing for quite some time. The Baltic states also synchronized to the Continental Europe Synchronous Area as a consequence of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Although their project has been long-standing, as you can see from the timeline, definitely the invasion of Ukraine accelerated the synchronization efforts of the Baltic states to the European grid. And you've probably seen the news in February. Officially, the Baltic states disconnected from the IPS-UPS Russian grid system and successfully synchronized with CESA. Another important consequence of the Ukraine war was the reduction of energy imports from Russia, particularly gas. European Union heavily relied on Russian imports, as it accounted for about 45% of its supply. So following the war in Ukraine and the subsequent reduction of gas supply to Europe, gas prices rose sharply, which also significantly affected electricity costs across all of Europe, leading to an energy crisis. The European Union has attempted to address this issue through the Repower EU initiative, which was aimed at specifically reducing dependency from Russian gas imports and diversifying supply sources, and accelerate also on the other side the deployment of renewable energy sources. At the same time, however, this additional renewable energy capacity presents some challenges, key of which I would say are the lack of grid capacity to accommodate additional generation capacity, as it requires efforts to integrate and handle decentralized renewable energy sources into the electricity grid, and also a tight supply of critical raw materials for procuring grid components and renewable energy generation is also a key challenge for Europe. When it comes to reliance on critical raw materials needs, Europe is pretty much dependent on raw materials imports from across the world, especially from China. And it will increasingly be so as the push for renewable energy expands demands for critical raw materials, especially for copper, nickel, cobalt, and lithium, which, as you can see from the percentages here, will account for, this is how much they will account in 2040, according to an IEA report in global demand for such resources. I will skip this slide, but this is basically just to show, again, the material needs in the future that will be required to fuel the the green economy, so to say. And as you can see, the majority of which, most of the critical raw materials are needed for especially offshore wind, onshore wind power, and solar photovoltaic power. So, as I said, the EU is quite dependent on raw material imports, and especially from China, from which it imports almost very much the entire critical raw materials for. It's heavily dependent on critical raw material imports from China, Turkey, and South Africa, Brazil, and other actors. You can see here on the right side, this is from the European Commission. They pretty much made a chart saying comparing the percentage of import from specific countries and the level of governance of that country. So there is a high percentage of imports concentrated in one or two suppliers, which makes the EU quite vulnerable to supply disruption in critical technology sectors. And as you can see on the left side, there is at least 7 materials that have very high or high supply risk. And on the right side, you can see the related sector. And as you can see that wind, traction motors, and photovoltaic, they are at very high risk of supply disruption, whose critical materials are at high risk of supply disruption. At the same time, the EU grid presents physical and non-physical threats. So the EU is quite aware of these threats. Physical threats can be identified as vandalism attacks, actual attacks, as we see in Ukraine, or sabotage, as we see in Serbia against transmission lines, substations, and power plants, but also weather events and natural disasters. They account also as physical threats, but also non-physical ones. For example, cyber attacks against control systems are quite frequent. And transmission system operators are aware of this, and they've put in place a number of mechanisms to increase the resilience of their security systems. At the same time, new technologies such as AI, while they can be beneficial for transmission system operators to optimize the distribution, predict outages, bringing several kinds of benefits, at the same time, this technology can bring additional challenges for electricity systems because it also enables, for example, more sophisticated cyber attacks, and indirectly data centers will require additional power to run AI systems, thus increasing further the demand for critical raw materials and electricity needs. So what is the EU doing to address these security challenges? Well, the EU already had established back in 2015 an energy union strategy, whose functioning has evolved, of course, to rely on deep technical cooperation between member states and EU institutions. And at the same time, more recently, the EU has also launched this Critical Raw Materials Act initiative to attempt to address the security of critical raw material supply. And as you can see on the left side, the main tenets of the energy union strategy are based on the security of supply, solidarity between members, integration of energy market, so the free flow of energy through an adequate infrastructure, energy efficiency, so reducing dependence on imports, decarbonization, and research, innovation, and competitiveness. I won't go through all of these measures, but just for your information, these are just some of the technical and legal measures that the EU has set up to address specific challenges when it comes to security of energy supply and critical raw materials. We saw before the Critical Raw Materials Act. This is just one, but we also have more technical ones, such as the Network Code on Cybersecurity, which establish a recurrent process for assessing cybersecurity risks for electricity flow, We also have initiatives on the defense side, such as the white paper on the future of European defense, which also highlights the need to protect strategic enablers in critical infrastructure such as energy, to diversify material supply, scale up defense production, which indirectly will also increase energy demand, and identify potential energy supply bottlenecks. And another one is the 10E regulation, which is quite important because it identifies priority corridors for electricity grid expansion and defines specific projects of common interest for the EU based on an assessment made by ENTSO-E. So in conclusion, the security of energy supply and access or availability to raw materials are increasingly shaping and being shaped by the EU securitization narratives and initiatives, and are constantly being framed as two interlinked aspects that need to achieve strategic autonomy. Energy security with electricity and critical raw materials at the forefront can be now considered as a multifaceted strategy, a strategic area which is affecting and at the same time being affected by other domains such as defense, industry, technology, and also geopolitical and environmental consideration. The purpose of this paper will be to try to assess these EU initiatives aimed at addressing these challenges from multiple angles and approaches. But the key question will remain, will they be enough? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Francesco. We are keeping very good time. May I turn to the next speaker, Samuel Jesus, and his paper is on the dignity, responsibility, and reciprocity, a framework for non-international arms conflict. Over to you, Samuel.
Well, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for being here today and presenting my research. My name is Samuel Jesus, and I'm going to present to you research titled Dignity, Responsibility, and Reciprocity, a framework for non-international armed conflict. I'm a political theory and international relations and human rights PhD candidate, and I'm going to present my research that is ongoing. Despite its 19th century roots, international humanitarian law binding nature is increasingly at risk, as we see in current conflicts. Examples are Ukraine, Russia, and Gaza conflicts. Nevertheless, we cannot forget the non-international armed conflicts in Africa, like in Congo or Sudan, or in Central African Republic, where I am right now. Sovereignty recognition, the line between domestic and international law, and separating natural from positive law, sustain legal voluntarism, reinforce non-intervention, and challenge domestic rights alignment with global rights. Non-international armed conflicts rules initially in the Geneva Convention's third common article and clarified in 1977 with additional protocol 2 now cover national non-international armed conflicts, but remain still the least regulated. State sovereignty, which allows for a state of exception and limits citizens' rights combined with weak accountability, hinders responsibility for human rights and humanitarian law. Mario Bettati states sovereignty is the mutual guarantee of torturers. In this vein, the use of violence to contain violence, as Jean-Pierre Dupuy pointed out, every step towards improving the effectiveness of violent methods to contain violence, we will be thrown into a vortex like a thread of straw, spinning all which offers minimum protection during armed conflicts. The problem remains when states, due to a lack of consensus and UN Security Council inefficacy, establish states of exception that becomes norms. Consequently, decision makers use hermeneutic criteria like isolationism, utilitarianism, and mercantilism applied by agents. Values of dignity, responsibility, and reciprocity, core to a humanistic renewal, overshadow protectionism and drive accountability and minimum protection for victims, ensuring states uphold human rights and in the IHL, International Humanitarian Law, is vital to safeguard individuals and populations. This article aims to integrate Mario Bettati critical globalist theory with Jean-Pierre Dupuy ethical relationism and views on responsibility, particularly in relation to international humanitarian law, as supported by other actors to strengthen its foundation. In conflicts between reason and violence, minimum reason should prevail even if force is involved. The research asks is what ethical foundations support the binding nature of law in non-international armed conflicts. Currently, it seeks to connect dignity, responsibility, and reciprocity, translating abstract concepts into concrete applications while considering the mutual, multilateral, and intersubjective nature of humanitarian norms. We adopt a critical and constructivist approach to examine norms of non-international armed conflicts, challenging a state-centered concept within a new world order. Using inductive reasoning, we relate Mario Bettati's critical globalist theory to Jean-Pierre Dupuy relationist approach to international humanitarian law. We also apply immanent critique to evaluate non-international conflict, considering international humanitarian law and human rights standards, addressing contradictions between ethnocentrism and globalism. This study employs a qualitative analysis of literature on polylogy involving international relations, focusing on interactions between state and non-state actors, future trends, and political intervention. It draws on bibliographic and documentary research in international law and ethics, emphasizing human dignity, responsibility, and reciprocity. Drawing on Bettati's and Dupuy's theories, this approach aims to enhance global ethical concepts and responsibilities of individual states and non-state actors. Considering human dignity prompts to us link about reciprocity and responsibility, which limits actions and relate to justice based on proportional reciprocity among equals. As Aristotle suggests, injustice often arises when the powerful neglect the weaker, both externally and internally. Victims of non-international armed conflicts deserve protection similar to international conflicts, but classification issues create challenges, as states often see these as internal matters. Recently, laws of non-international conflicts have aligned with international law, influenced by jurisprudence from international tribunals for Yugoslavia and Rwanda. And international conflicts now also apply to international conflict rules now also apply to non-international armed conflicts. Mario Bettati is a critic constructivist focused on ethical evolution of international law and effectiveness of IHL in resolving humanitarian issues. He has proposed global solutions to armed conflicts and urgency of human rights. Non-international armed conflicts involve opposition to governments through violence to achieve political aims like autonomy, secession, or ending constitutional order. These conflicts occur between armed groups and states or among groups themselves as they seek supremacy. Despite being less regulated, being the less regulated, conflict regulation began with the Labor Code during a civil war, the American Civil War. Positive regulation helps mitigate the savage instincts of combat and builds military discipline, but dissemination and awareness of duties are crucial. Beta thieves emphasize that battles fought at the expense of human dignity are lost, advocating for limits on means and methods to balance humanity with the military necessity. Nowadays, autonomous weapons pose new challenges, but armed conflicts rules remain human-centric. Violations are attributed to people, not machines. Normative laws must adapt to technologies like drones and cyber attacks, raising ethical and legal questions in remote warfare. Humanitarian principles are vital. Reciprocity can provoke restraint in conflict behavior. In an international conflict, one party respects humanitarian law, expecting the other to adhere to it for the sake of the civilian and those outside the fighting. However, in internal conflicts, religious and ethical issues linked with fanaticism hinder the development of humanitarian reciprocity. We can see a contradiction between containment and the proposal of annihilation. As René Girard pointed out, we are right to identify reciprocal action and the mimetic principle, the spring of violent imitation, which makes adversaries more and more like each other, is what we find at the root of all myths and of all cultures. On the other hand, what we seek is reciprocal humanistic action. For the law of armed conflicts to be effective, it must be widely respected by states and conflict parties. In non-international conflicts, parties need awareness of international humanitarian law and must respect it as legitimation and recognition, guaranteeing rights and duties. It should emphasize universality and consensual acceptance enforced through coercion, sanctions, and control. Implementation requires transposition into domestic law and education, special for military to prevent and enforce compliance. Command responsibility is to ensure armed forces and recognize armed groups understand their duties and how to respect them. Jean-Pierre Dupuy, as a philosopher and mathematician, explores moral, social, economic, political philosophy, science, metaphysics, and literary theory. His multidisciplinary work offers a critical view of current conflicts. Dupuy discusses the ethics of dissuasion, emphasizing reciprocity when adverse actions threaten peace. Reciprocal action and the mimetic principle reflect the same reality. For example, guerrilla warfare shows defending first can respond to aggression, highlighting reciprocity. This duality can either prevent or provoke extreme reactions, unifying human interaction. Under optimal conditions, exhalated acts can escalate conflicts to war, driven by reciprocal violence or, in another way, its avoidance. Human mimesis is linked to animal mimesis and natural reality involving instinctive imitation. Irrational behavior, like accepting beliefs irrationally, leads to imitation, while rational evidentialism enables reciprocity. Responsibility is managed through individuals, organizations, and states to enforce reciprocal accountability. From a Western point of view, temporal linearity sees a positive evolutionary path based on the 18th century ideals, where later generations benefit from prior sacrifices. Ethical theory suggests prioritizing society's most disadvantages to pass benefits for. However, those who work hardest often benefit least, creating a need for balance to avoid rupture and extremism opposing humanism. Today, an opposing paradigm threatens the future through climate change or disasters, requiring our moral responsibility to prevent self-destruction. Scientific knowledge increases this responsibility for current and future generations. To embody our humanistic values, we must normalize their meaning and educate society and machines all worldwide to adopt an ethical normative standard, fostering true global citizenship rooted in humanistic principles. Resistance stems from society values which shapes individual attitudes and actions. As Bertrand Badi expressed, the thought of which Aristotle spoke, the common denominator of a humanity destined to live together around a common codification. We highlight the war lasting legacy in human history, emphasizing the need for strong humanitarian norms based on principles such as distinction, necessity, proportionality, and humanity. Legal frameworks have improved to hostilities, but the growth of actors, technological advances, and complex conflicts as enforcement and consensus. There's an urgent need to implement existing norms better and develop new ones to address more armed violence. Education, cultural change, and empowering individuals to advocate for human rights are essential. Reinforcing these principles and adapting them to new realities is key to preserving dignity and peace. Human dignity relies on universal values shared across humanity, acting as a basic currency in extreme situations like conflicts. Reciprocity, organization, and discipline underpin the recognition of conflict parties and protection of civilians through implementation is staggered in non-international armed conflicts. IHL, based on non-derogable principles such as restraint and distinction, aims to rationalize conflict, but challenges remain, especially in sovereign states with internal conflicts. Reciprocity helps contain irrationality, but religious and fanatic issues threaten humanitarian principles, sometimes and often leading to extremism. Jean-Pierre Dupuy illuminated catastrophism, advocates for awareness of war extremes, linking past and future. Deterrence and mimicry influence conflict dynamics, often opposing autonomy and rationality. Identifying rational patterns and reciprocity is vital in such conflicts. Reciprocity also involves future-oriented actions that impact coming generations, emphasizing the importance of survival and improved conditions.
Samuel, can you finish within 1 minute? We are running out of time now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Humanity must hinder utilitarian pursuits driven by mass ideology, which diminishes autonomy. Technological advances necessitate regulation grounded in humanistic values. Most conflicts of societal origins, but are less regulated due to a lack of consensus, rising sovereignty and fragmentation. Developing responses that respect IHL principles rooted in centuries of evolution is crucial in meeting modern challenges. Thank you very much for your patience, and I'm looking forward for your comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Samuel. Let us turn to the last speaker on this panel, Roseanne. Her talk is on is strategic rivalry and cooperative leadership, roles of Russia and China with BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Over to you, Roseanne.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Mr. Andrew. Can you see my
Yes, I can. Yes, I can see it myself, yes. Please make sure you finish on time because we have got to close off by 1:30, okay?
It's in the full screen. Full screen, you can see my presentation on full screen.
Yes, I mean, you are the last speaker, so, but we've got to round up the whole panel by 1:30. Anyway, you've got about 23 minutes.
Okay, hello everyone. Today I will be presenting on the topic of strategic rivalry or cooperative leadership. This is a comparative analysis of the evolving roles of Russia and China in two multilateral platforms, that is BRICS Plus and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So without wasting time, let's dive in. First, I will give you a very brief introduction of my topic. As you know, that the 21st century has witnessed a gradual decline of unipolarity and the rise of multipolar structures. Therefore, institutions like BRICS Plus and SCO are seen as vehicles to challenge Western dominance and build alternative global governance frameworks. But within these platforms, the roles of Russia and China have sparked up fundamental questions like, are they true partners in leadership, or are they competitors with overlapping ambitions? So why I'm focusing on the role of Russia and China, because these two major powers are core drivers of these both platforms. They shape their agenda, their membership and institutional roles of both of these multilateral platforms. Secondly, the research objective of my study is threefold. First, to assess how Russia and China shape these multilateral bodies. Second, to evaluate whether their behavior is more cooperative or competitive. And finally, to analyze this through political, economic, and institutional dimensions. Now I will give you a very brief overview of BRICS Plus and SCO. What is BRICS Plus? It is more economic-centric, flexible expansion. BRICS Plus is an expanded format of the original BRICS group, which includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The terms BRICS Plus refers to efforts to broaden the group's outreach and cooperation with other emerging economies and developing countries. It was first introduced in 2017 by China during its BRICS presidency, aimed at creating a more inclusive platform for South-South cooperation. It involves partnerships with non-BRICS countries from Africa, Latin America, Asia, and the Middle East. It seeks to reshape global governance, promote multipolarity, and reduce Western dominance in global affairs. In 2023, BRICS expanded by inviting 6 new members, which includes Egypt, Iran, UAE, reflecting the BRICS Plus vision in action. In short, BRICS Plus is a strategic attempt to build a larger coalition of global South cooperation. for mutual development, economic reform, and geopolitical balance. Secondly, what is SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization? It is a regional intergovernmental organization which was founded in 2001 in Shanghai by China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Its initial focus was on regional security, especially counterterrorism, separatism, and extremism. Over time, its scope has expanded to include economic cooperation, culture exchange, connectivity, and multilateral diplomacy. Now, its major members include India and Pakistan, which joined the organization in 2017, and Iran joined it recently in 2023, making it one of the largest regional organizations in terms of geographic and population size. It promotes multipolarity, non-interference, and mutual respect for sovereignty, often viewed as counterbalance to Western alliances like NATO. In essence, the SCO is a platform for regional stability and cooperation in Eurasia, led primarily by China and Russia, with a growing focus on geopolitical and economic coordination among emerging powers. In this slide, you can see the members of BRICS Plus, all the countries. And in this slide, you can see the member countries of the SCO. So now, the main focus of my presentation is on the comparison of the roles of Russia and China in the BRICS Plus and the SCO. So here in these slides, I have done a comparison of the role of Russia and China in the BRICS Plus. As you can see in the slide, that Russia role in the BRICS Plus is to counteract Western sanctions and promote a multipolar world. It pushes for financial sovereignty such as de-dollarization and aims to solidify energy cooperation and ties with the global south. While its economic capabilities may be limited compared to China, its diplomatic activism remains strong. Whereas the China role in the BRICS Plus, by contrast, dominates economically. It links BRICS Plus with its broader Belt and Road Initiative, pushing for development-oriented leadership. It promotes institutional tools like the New Development Bank and uses investment diplomacy to expand its influence. While Russia pushes for the political narrative, China sets the economic agenda of the BRICS Plus organization. Now, in these slides, I have done the comparison of the roles of Russia and China in the SCO. In the SCO, China plays a central security role, particularly in the Central Asia, which it considers its strategic backyard. It leads military coordination and counterterrorism through the SCO RATS mechanism. However, it is increasingly cautious about China's growing economic footprint in the same region. What is the China role in the SCO? China's strength in the SCO lies in economic diplomacy. Through massive investment in infrastructure and energy projects, China has become a crucial economic partner for many Central Asian states. Its focus is on connectivity, soft power, and long-term presence, complementing but also sometimes overshadowing Russia's strategic focus. So whether their roles in both the organization is also seen also shows some signs of strategic rivalry. How? Because despite cooperation, there are signs of strategic rivalry persists. Central Asia is a zone of subtle competition. Russia seeks loyalty and strategic control, while China seeks markets and access to natural resources. Their institutional overlaps, like China's Belt and Road Initiative and Russia's Eurasia Economic Union, have different goals, creating tensions. But there are also, signs of cooperative leadership. There is ample evidence of cooperative leadership between the two major powers in both the organizations. Yet cooperation is undeniable. Both countries are united in their criticism of the Western-led global order. They share support for principles like non-interference and multipolarity. Importantly, they seem to follow a strategic division of labor. Russia leads in security while China in economics. The comparative metrics. The comparative metric summarizes their interaction. Economically, China leads, while in security, Russia dominates. Ideologically, they align in their anti-Western stance. Their cooperation is not entirely equal, but it is coordinated and not confrontational. The theoretical interpretations from the theoretical lens, realism explains their underlying power competition. Constructivism shows shared norms like sovereignty and non-intervention, and institutionalism highlights their rules-based cooperation is still possible even between unequals. The key findings of my research study is that overall Russia and China maintain a flexible partnership. In BRICS Plus, China drives economic leadership while Russia contributes to diplomatic assertiveness. In the SCO, China anchors security framework while Russia anchors security framework while China ensures economic penetration. Their rivalry is managed but not disruptive. What are the policy implications? These dual platforms, BRICS Plus and the SCO, are likely to become increasingly influential in global governance. Russia and China will continue to play balancing roles. Other member states can benefit from this dynamic by negotiating influence from both powers. To conclude my presentation, I will say that Russia and China are neither pure rivals nor full allies. Their interaction is best described as strategic dualism, a mix of cooperation and competition adapted to context. Understanding their behavior in these institutions is crucial for analyzing the broader transition to a multipolar world. Thank you, everyone, for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much indeed, Rosanne. We are now right on the dot and supposed to finish this panel. So there is no time for questions and answers, but as convener, let me try to summarize it in 2 minutes and throw in a bit of ideas for you to think about. We have covered the role of parliamentary democracy, the strategic role played by rare earths, the various principles underlining immigration and humanitarian issues, and also the rivalry between powers like Russia, China in the BRICS summit, all addressing the new challenges of the global order, while the global order seems to be broken down with the international rules being replaced increasingly by rules of the jungle. And it's a kind of survival of the fittest. So humanitarian principles and other broad issues may not always win the game or tip the balance. So I think that with this thought, it is a quite a testy subject, especially as we are now into deeper waters when the whole world, the world order seems to be broken down, and with the United Nations almost completely unable to address issues over Gaza and then even Ukraine, while the defender of the international global order seems to be throwing all these principles out of the window. So anyway, this is a rich subject for us to dig further into, and I hope to be able to see you all and to take part in your insightful presentations. Thank you very much indeed.